There we go. Hey, welcome to Sound Lab Studios on a early in the morning on a Saturday. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday, at least where I live. Little reference to Billy Joel, which we'll be doing sometime later. But today we're going to be doing album of the year 1966. So 1966 was a very big year for music. Lots of experimentation going on. This is kind of the year where music kind of turned around and people were going through all kinds of crazy things, experimenting with their music. But lots of great albums came out this year, so it's going to be kind of difficult to pick a top three. But here is, of course, Nick
Hello.
joining me today. Nick, anything you want to say before we get into our top three albums?
Very surprised that 1966 was as good as it was. Like when I was going into this, like when I was thinking albums of like the year starting from 65, I'm like, yeah, 65 and 66 are going to be good, but I don't think they're going to be as good as 67, 68, and 69. But I was surprised when I was looking at the albums. I'm like, wow, this is 66. Wow, this is also 66. I'm like, wow, I was surprised some of them I thought was 67. So yeah, that's how I feel.
All right, if you want to go ahead, um, just in case you're new, I don't see anybody watching right now, but honestly, these album of the year videos are more for the replay because we're doing them so early in the morning.
Yeah.
Um, how we do this here is we have our top three albums, so we go back and forth. We list our third favorite, our second favorite, then we list some honorable mentions, and then we list our album of the year. So if you want to go ahead and get into number three.
My number three, I don't own it. Small Faces debut album. This album's incredible. If you want to, like, people often say when I think mod rock, one of the first bands I think of is The Who, but like another band I think right away is the Small Faces. They were just simply incredible, and their starting album in '66 is just amazing. Shake, sung by Ronnie Lane, from he went on being in the Faces later. Come on Children, really great song. Steve Marriott rocks it on the vocals. Same with You Better Believe It. It's Too Late, One Night Stand. One of their first, I think it's their very first single. What You Gonna Do About It? Really amazing. Again, Steve Marriott just being the absolute best at vocals. Sorry, She's Mine, really great song. Own Up Time, really solid instrumental. You Need Loving, which is Led Zeppelin, kind of like took some of like what C. Marriott was doing on that album and kind of redid it for themselves. But I think this was way better vocally speaking. Don't Stop What You're Doing. We really saw a track. E2D. Uh, it's actually the very first song that's about drugs, which is interesting. You would, if you listen to it, you would think it would be like a psychedelic song, but it's like a kind of like a blues rock song about it, and I think it's really solid. And then the very last song, "Sha La 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 Lee," which is one of my favorite songs by them. But yeah, this is absolute, absolutely essential for 1966.
Okay, I'm gonna have to pull up my album number three. There it is. Okay, my number three, I actually do not own as well, but my number three is Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme by Simon and Garfunkel. Re-listening to this album for the Simon and Garfunkel rating stream made me really just realize what a great album this was. And I originally had a different album in the number three spot, but unfortunately it got bumped down. Opens up with Scarborough Fair, just an amazing. It was kind of an old folk song that Paul Simon kind of put his own spin on. That one's great. Patterns is this urgent song. That one's really cool. Cloudy is just really relaxing. Homeward Bound, one of their best songs. Big Bright Green Pleasure Machine, kind of talking about consumerism and making pot references at the same time. Um, Feeling Groovy, 59th Street Bridge song is groovy. Dangling Conversation is great. Flowers Never Been with the Rain is really good. There's, again, I can't pronounce this song, but it's kind of a Bob Dylan joke on Bob Dylan. Um, For Emily, Wherever I May Find Her, really great. Poem on the Underground Wall, and then it closes very poignantly with Silent Night slash the 7 o'clock news, which, if you want to hear my opinions on that song, go have a listen to our Simon and Garfunkel stream because I go into really big details on how much I really like that song. So,
Yeah, it's incredible. When you say Dylan, he thinks Dylan Thomas, whoever he was. Man, ain't got no culture. But it's all right, ma. My number two is a quick one.
of course.
I really wanted this one to be number one, but I have my number one where it is, and I'm like, yeah, I feel strong on that one. But yeah, this is amazing. Whiskey Man, Cobwebs and Strange, I Need You. Uh, Kind of the title track ish, if you could say. Quick one while he's away. Parentheses. Run, Run, Run. Boris the Spider. Don't Look Away. This whole album is just ear candy. I It's like every song on this is really good. Uh, Maybe yeah, it's not even a maybe. It's just this whole album is really good, and I just happen to feel the one that's coming after is just better.
I also really like that album, but it barely missed my top three. Um, my number two, and this is going to be a lot of people's number one, Revolver by the Beatles. Pay close attention because I'm pretty sure this is going to be the only album of the year in the 60s where the Beatles don't take the top spot. There's just one album I like slightly better. This is still an amazing album. Um, this is my UK copy. It was expensive, but it was worth it. It sounds really good. Taxman, George Harrison is starting off with some psychedelic sounds and coughing, which is interesting, but I've always really liked this song with funny lyrics about how the taxman is just out to take all your money. I really like Paul McCartney's guitar solo on here. Then we get Eleanor Rigby, which is one of the Beatles' best songs. It's kind of just Paul McCartney and an orchestra with John doing a little bit of the back harmonizations on it, but it's just an amazing classically inspired song. Whenever you got George Martin at the helm, you have no idea what the production is going to be like on these Beatles songs. And then we have I'm Only Sleeping, which employs backwards guitar solos, and I think that's really cool. Oddly enough, this wasn't on the US version of Revolver, which is kind of sad, but it does appear on the Yesterday and Today album, which is pretty good. Love You Too is George Harrison dipping his toes in Indian classical music. Here, There, and Everywhere is Paul McCartney trying to make his own version of God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. Yellow Submarine is kind of this goofy song with a bunch of psychedelic sound effects in it. She Said is this really cool rocking song. Good Day Sunshine is a kind of cool little 1920s style pop song. And Your Bird Can Sing is a really great rocker. For No One, that's a great song. Has a French horn solo on it. Dr. Robert is probably my least favorite song on this album, but it's still alright. I Want to Tell You, another George Harrison song. And you Got to Get You Into My Life, which is Paul McCartney putting a horn section behind his song, which, oddly enough, is the song that inspired the band Chicago to exist. And then it closes with the trippy song Tomorrow Never Knows. So, really great album. Should be number one, but there's just one album that's slightly better.
It's funny. I was listening to "Save the Life of My Child" from the Bookends album, and I looked at the comment section, and one of them's like, "This is like their Tomorrow Never Knows,"
It
which
kind
is
of
kind of true.
is. Okay,
But
so honorable
starting
mentions time.
starting through all, like, I have a lot of honorable mentions. My very first one, "Strangers in the Night" by Frank Sinatra. Uh, has the title track "Strangers in the Night." Really great song. "Summer in the Wind," really nice, relaxing song. Like, this whole album is just easy listening the whole way through with the Wrecking Crew and all that. And my dad got me into Frank Sinatra, so
Mm.
I had to include a Frank Sinatra album in this. But it's my lowest, like, out of all of them, out of all my honorable mentions. Uh, Next one, "Sounds of Silence." This one really great album. I rank this as my lowest Simon and Garfunkel album, but like I said, all five of them are incredible. Uh, I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I forgot Rosemary Stage in Time and all that was on 66, so I'm just gonna say that. I don't feel like going through my albums and finding it. Uh, Another album that year that I really like that I don't own, As Is by Manfred Mann, really great. They had lead vocals Paul Jones, and then I forgot the name of the second guy who took lead vocals, but that was the very first album he took lead vocals. Next album I don't own Buffalo Springfield's debut album. I'm not gonna show it because a lot of people know that album. Another album. If music be the food of love, then prepare for indigestion. Funny album name. This is Dave D. Doty Beaky Mickensitch's second album. Really great British band. Has some really great songs on it. Hideaway, Shame, uh, Bend It, All I Want. Just great album. Just has fierce competition. Next one, Hold On by Herman's Hermits. Great album for 66. This was the soundtrack to the movie Hold On. Never watched that movie before, but it's kind of like them trying to do what the Beatles did with the A Hard Day's Night. Having a rave up with the Yardbirds. We should all mourn the loss of Jeff Beck. This is a great album of his with the Yardbirds. You're a Better Man Than I, Evil Hearted You, Still I'm Sad, Heart Full of Soul, The Train Kept a Rolling. And then the second side is like live tracks, but they're also really good. Roger the Engineer, or just their self-titled album, actually has Jeff Beck singing on the album. One of those songs, "The Nas Are Blue." You actually hear him singing on the album, and I think it's really good. "Lost Woman," really good. "Over Under Sideways Down," one of their best songs. "Ever Since the World Began," I really like that one. "I Can't Make Your Way," really good. "Jeff's Blues," really solid work. Okay, "Would You Believe" by the Hollies, really solid work. "I'm a Rock," great Simon and Garfunkel cover. "I Can't Let Go," one of their best singles. "Take Your Time," Buddy Holly cover. "Hard Hard Year," Fifi the Flea, "Oriental Sadness," and what's another one that they did? "Oriental Sadness." They only had 4 originals, but those 4 originals are great. "I've Got Away on My Own," really great. Yeah, just this whole album's good, but like there's some weak spots on it, so that's why I didn't put it that high on my honorable mentions. "From Nowhere" by the Trogs. This is their debut album. This is the only album by them I actually owned because of how much I really like it. Everyone's heard of "Wild Thing" before, one of the more iconic rock songs of the British invasion. The Kitty Cat song, pretty funny cover about a kitty cat. "Ride Your Pony," really good. "Hi Hi Hazel," "I Just Sing," and "Evil." Graham Nash from the Hollies actually reviewed the singles of this year, and "Hi Hi Hazel" came on, and it was like after like a Beatles song, and he was like, "What is this garbage? You give me the Beatles, and then you give me this garbage." "Jingle Jangle," really nice ballad. "Jaguar and the Thunderbird," great Chuck Berry cover. My number 10, Pet Sounds. I'm guessing that's Garrett's number 1. He doesn't have to say anything. "Wouldn't It Be Nice?" You Still Believe in Me. This, like I said in my ranking video, like what am I to add to one of the most best albums of all time? It's just one of those albums that I can't just add to it because everyone's already said everything about it. Number 9.
Hey, Mickey.
What's up?
Just saying hi. Mickey joined the stream,
Oh,
or he
awesome.
he just left a comment.
Dave D. Dozy Beacon Mitsutish's first album. Kind of reminds me kind of reminds me of like the Who almost with one of their songs, "Hold Tight." It's like a mix between the Who and the Kinks. That's what this band reminds me of, and that's probably why I like them so much. Another, I have so many albums. It's not even funny. "Face to Face" by the Kinks, amazing album. I was really, at first I actually did have this at number three, but then I just remember there was so many albums of this year, so I just made an honorable mention. Um, Party Line, Rosie Won't You Come Home, Dandy, Too Much on My Mind, Session Man, which is about Nicky Hopkins.
Mm.
Uh, if I was Nicky Hopkins, if you listen to the song, I would both take it as a love letter and as like them making fun of me because it's like, well, it's like he's not a think, he's just paid to play, and like there's some parts of the song where like Ray Davies is like complimenting him, and then there's parts of the song where he's like bashing him almost.
Oh,
Rainy Day in June's decent. House in the Country is pretty rocking. Holiday in Waukee, Most Exclusive Residence for Sale. Fancy, Little Miss Queen of Darkness, You're Looking Fine. Sunny Afternoon, one of their most iconic songs. And I'll Remember closest it out. Oof. Yeah, another album I really enjoy. Revolver. Sorry, this is not my number one.
oh
I
wow.
really wanted this to be in my top three, but like I said, there was
Okay,
just
so the Who wasn't your top one, and the Beatles aren't your top one. I'm guessing it's going to be a Hollies album, but we'll see.
um, another one. Mamas and the Papas. If you, this is my very first album I ever owned. This is another album that I wanted to be in my top three, but you know, there's like I said, there's so many great albums that year. Um, their self-titled album from 1966. Their second album. No Salt on Her Tail, Trip, Stumble, and Fall, Dancing Bear, Words of Love, I Saw Her Again, Strange Young Girls. Side two is what makes this album. Side one's great, but side two is what is my favorite part of the album.
Mm. Their cover of Words of Love is better than the Beatles, and I rarely say that about any Beatles songs.
This isn't a cover of this. This is actually a completely different song.
Oh,
Words of Love
oops.
is
I guess I
yeah,
was thinking of something else.
yeah, because Mama Cat's like Words of Love, soft, like it's completely different from the Beatles one. When you think Words of Love, you think the Beatles and the Buddy Holly song, but it's a completely different song.
Oops, I'm gonna get
I
I'm
forgot to
gonna get
mention the songs on this one. This album is the one that contains California
I'm gonna get
Dreaming
some
and
trouble for
Monday
that.
Monday. Also, it contains one of my favorite Beatle covers, which is "I Call Your Name."
I think that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's the one you're thinking of. Much better than the Beatles version. I with the Hollies track, if I needed someone, I like slightly think it's better, but this one I think it's just way better than the Beatles. When I heard the Beatles version, I was like really disappointed. I'm like, wow,
Also,
is
what's
this
funny
planned
about
when I
that album is because it was released in the 60s, they thought for some reason toilets were toilet humor, so they like put a big hype sticker over the toilet.
wow, interesting. And my last honorable mention is the Holly's last album of 1966, which is For Certain Because.
Oh, so your number one isn't a Hollies album. So I have no idea what your number one album is going to be. Oh wait, never mind. I think I do.
Yep,
It's one of my honorable mentions.
yep.
Okay, on to my honorable mentions. Not nearly as many, but let's see. I'm gonna pull up my. Okay, first off, Buffalo Springfield's debut album, which I forgot was 1966. So thank you for reminding me that. That's a great album. I own a lot of these albums I have as honorable mentions, but I'm not gonna put them up because they're just honorable mentions. Um, Aftermath by the Rolling Stones. That's my favorite Stones album. The Who released their second album in 1966. Simon and Garfunkel, Sounds of Silence, and Cream, Fresh Cream, as well as Bob Dylan, Blonde on Blonde, which was about to make my top three. It was going to be my number three, but then Simon and Garfunkel, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme barely edged it out. So that is My honorable mentions now on to top album of 1966.
Wow, it's funny. I like so many, and you're just like, here's three. But my number one is gonna be Aftermath by the
Yeah.
Rolling Stones. You guessed it probably in your head, but for me, this is like one of the most. This is like it's hard. It's hard for me to say an album's perfect because that would just mean like it's just perfect. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the perfect album, and I try to like be like critical, and I try to like find at least one track that I'm like, yeah, this is this. I could take or leave this one song, but yeah, this album I can't say that this is in my opinion the perfect album. Yeah, there could have been there were a lot of great singles out that year. 19 Nervous Breakdown, Painted Black.
Mhm.
There was just like a bunch of B sides and a bunch of unreleased stuff that they could have put on this album, but
I
I
mean,
like to
I'm
think
Going Home is a little long, but that's like probably the biggest complaint I have about it.
that's like the only complaint. But I've listened to this album so many times that it's no longer a complaint for me. It's just like
Mm.
I just like kind of zone out to it, and I just like really enjoy it because it's like not only that, but it's the influence of the end by the Doors. So
Uh,
I take more appreciation to it because not only that, but when I listen to the Doors song, I'm like, oh yeah, Going Home by the Rolling Stones. Mother's Little Helper opens it up, and one of their strongest songs they ever made in the '60s with Brian Jones. Stupid Girl, such a it reminds me of the Beach Boys early stuff, and it's so good. Uh, Lady Jane, really strong track. Under My Thumb, great. The
do,
Marimba
do,
by
do,
Brian
do,
Jones,
do, do,
really
do, do,
great.
do.
Don't You Bother Me, it's such a great song with the slide guitar with Brian Jones, and then Going Home with the 11-minute blues song. But I think it works really well. But I feel like the only like one of the strongest things about the album is Brian Jones. Like he really
Mhm.
he makes the album. Like he's the after in Aftermath. Like without Brian Jones, this album probably wouldn't has been as good as it was.
Like for me with the Rolling Stones, I feel like the only album without Brian Jones that I really like of theirs is Sticky Fingers because like well, I say that I really like Some Girls and It's Only Rock and Roll and
Testament.
Tattoo You. Those ones are all pretty good, but I don't think that those ones are as good.
Yeah, and Flight 505 opens up side two. High and Dry, really nice. Out of Time, one of my favorite songs by them. Uh, it's Not Easy. I love the track a lot. I Am Waiting. Uh, Take It or Leave It. I can't say that. I love this track. It's just the words "take it or leave it." You think it'd be like, oh, I could take or leave this track. No, it's an amazing track. This is like "Take It or Leave It," "Out of Time," and "What to Do." I'm mad those songs aren't on the if those three tracks were on the U.S. Revolver, if they were on the U.S. Aftermath album and they took out if they took out like Going Home and they put those three tracks on plus Mother's Little Helper
I
and
have a few comments about that whenever you're done because I
and
made a
19
playlist.
and 19 Nervous Breakdown, like I wouldn't have minded the US version because I feel like the idea of making Aftermath better isn't a bad idea, but the way
Okay,
they did
so
it, like taking out Mother's Little Helper out of Time, Take It or Leave It and What to Do, and putting and keeping the Going Home track, and I'm like, no.
I'm upset because my favorite version of Aftermath is a playlist that I made. I have the US version on vinyl, which I actually like a little bit better because those songs that they took off, like I like those on Flowers because Flowers is a great album. But um, if they weren't on Flowers, this playlist I made is probably the best version of Aftermath, and it doesn't even exist on record. But let me find it. Okay, so my version of Aftermath is side one, Mother's Little Helper, Stupid Girl, Lady Jane, Under My Thumb, Think, and Out of Time. And then side two is Paint It Black, Flight 505, High and Dry, It's Not Easy, I Am Waiting, and then it closes with 19th Nervous Breakdown.
such a great such a great playlist. So good.
I put it up on YouTube in my playlist if anybody wants to listen to that. But
Yeah, I listened to it before. It's really nice, but yeah, it bothers me that that they like on the US version they took out those four amazing tracks. And yeah, Painted Black is great, but it hasn't to me it hasn't it's like compared to the other tracks that they got rid of, it's not the strongest. Like if they would have kept both Mother's Little Helper and Painted Black, I wouldn't have minded so much. But it's like if yeah, it's like kind of like Rubber Soul. Like when they took out Nowhere Man, that's how I feel about this
mm,
album. It's like when they took out Nowhere Man, I'm like man, Rubber Soul isn't Rubber Soul without Nowhere Man, and that's how I feel about out of Aftermath. Like Aftermath is an Aftermath without Out of Time and Mother's Little Helper, and so that's how I feel.
the biggest problem I have with Flowers is not about the Aftermath tracks, but that they reused those two singles that were on Between the Buttons in the US
Yeah,
version. Like, they could have used 19th Nervous Breakdown on Flowers, or like, I know there were some other B-sides they could have used.
Who's Driving Your Plane?
Yeah.
They had the A side, so why not put the B side?
Yeah, and then we would have had to have those two repeat tracks,
Yeah, probably for sales.
probably. Anyway,
Because who's gonna want to buy Rolling Stone with just deep tracks on it? Like no one. I'm talking about like fans of back then,
back in the 60s, they're
like this doesn't
you
have
can
any.
buy the new Rolling Stones album, Flowers, featuring Ruby Tuesday.
I'm in.
Anyway, my number one, you guessed it, and if you've been around this channel anytime, you know I can't show it because it's hanging over my record player. That's how much I love it. Is Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. The first time I listened to this album, I was like, that's okay, because I heard it was really good, and then I listened to it and I was like, it's just okay. But then, like, I listened to it some more. I watched the Love and Mercy movie, and it really increased my appreciation for this album. Uh, Opens perfectly with "Wouldn't It Be Nice." Such a lovely song. It's great. And then "You Still Believe in Me" has Brian Wilson using a pen to pluck the inside of a piano strings for the intro. It's got like bike horns and bike bells and all kinds of cool sound effects on it. That's Not Me is a really cool song that features just the Beach Boys instead of the Wrecking Crew. Um, I'm Waiting for the Day has that iconic drum beat. Um, Let's Go Away for a While is a really nice instrumental song. Um, Sloop John B is a really cool single. I like the music video for it where they're like bringing out that inflatable raft
Yeah, that's
in the
I like
pool.
that a lot too.
And then you flip the record over and you get the best song on the album, God Only Knows, which so much has already been said about that I really can't add anything to it other than it's amazing. Um, you got some other great songs on the B side. Here Today, that one's really cool. And then there's like some studio chatter in the background that they mixed in on purpose. I think that's cool how they did that. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times. That's a really great song. Employs the theremin. And it closes with Caroline No, which is really great. And the last sounds you hear on the album are just like a train passing by and some dogs barking. So if you
That's
wanted to hear pet sounds, there they are.
Mhm.
So just to recap, my top three albums of 1966 were Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme by Simon and Garfunkel, Revolver by the Beatles, and number one was Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys.
Great picks. My number three was the Small Faces debut album, aptly titled Small Faces. There's it's funny. Their second album too is also named Small Faces. 66. I call it Small Faces self-titled, and the second album, which I'm going to be mentioning in our next album of the year. I'll just call it Small Faces 67 because it's another self-titled album. My number two spot is a quick one by The Who. And my number one is Aftermath by the Rolling Stones.
All right. Well, speaking of which, go home and don't you bother me no more because we're done. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week for 1967.